Exodus chapter 19 is our study tonight. Exodus chapter 19. We just keep getting more and more people tonight, and you just don't know. We may have a full house here before you know it. In Exodus 19, we're in, as I mentioned last week, we're in a chapter that is full of glory and majesty, and we need to consider just exactly what the God of Israel, Jehovah God, our Creator, the Lord of heaven and earth, what did He have in mind as He set the scene? We know that we're coming up on chapter 20, where God gives the 10 Commandments from His mountain with His voice. And all of the nation of Israel, all 2 or 3 million people gathered in the desert below the mountain. They were listening, and they heard the voice of God like a great thunder. And that's not something that we read about in the Bible often. God did not just speak in that way. We know that He would speak at various times throughout the Old Testament era and into the New Testament era. He would speak by means of prophets, or they were called seers. He would send dreams and visions, or He would send angels. In any case, whether it was with an angel or a prophet, in any case, it was still a marvelous thing. And we know that those who saw angels reported as being terrified and being filled with wonder and fear. And yet this was something else. Now, we do have in the New Testament time when Jesus was here upon the earth, of course He was God in the flesh, and as men heard Jesus' voice, they were listening to the voice of God. No doubt about that. But God in heaven speaking, He actually did that 3 times. You remember when Jesus was baptized? What else? How about on the Mount of Transfiguration? You heard the voice of God. The 3 men did, 3 apostles. And then one more time, there in John 12, when Jesus was in the last week before His death, and the Lord thundered, and when Jesus said, "Father, glorify your name," and He said, "I have glorified it, and I will." So on 3 occasions in the New Testament, we do have a similar situation. The people who were there said it was like thunder, and the voice here of God is again described as being like thunder, although it's even much more than that here. And we're going to try to understand and appreciate it. But I'd like to try to get us to think a bit about what maybe God had in mind in the way in which He revealed Himself to the nation of Israel at this stage. Because it's not common, it's not ordinary, it's a great honor He pays them. But the way that He does it causes them to tremble. And we see the word tremble used several times. We see in verse 16, the people in the camp, when it all began to tremble. When God just began to display His power and glory, at the very beginning, they were already trembling, and it just got even more and more overwhelming. We're told in verse 18 that the mountain trembled. We'll watch for that in just a moment. And then you add to that all that God told them, all of God's warnings to them, all added together to create an effect. And you see then in chapter 20 and verse 18, after God had announced the 10 Commandments, again, the people were afraid and trembled and stood afar off. Now, He had been telling them come near to the mountain, but don't touch the foot of the mountain. Don't touch the edge. Don't touch it. Okay? He said, if you touch it, you will die. He says, don't let the people break forth or break out lest they die. He repeated that several times, and then after he said that, then when he called Moses up there, he said, you tell them, don't forget, don't break before they come and try to touch the mountain. Don't try to see God lest you die. Now that also would be pretty terrifying, don't you think? Not only that, he said, now if man or beast crosses the line and comes up, that individual, man or beast, was to be stoned or shot through with an arrow. Okay? They were not to lay their hands. Here, if this person had touched the mountain, they were not to touch him, but rather to execute him on the spot with stones or arrows without touching him. So these are things I'd like to focus on, because this becomes some of the background of the Bible from here on out. This narrative, as I've mentioned, is repeated in the Psalms and in the prophets and in the word, even in the book of Judges, that different ones call back to mind hundreds of years later this very event. And even in the New Testament, in the book of Hebrews, again, it's all repeated because it is so very important. God was trying to communicate something by the very way in which he was revealing himself to them at this time. And as we have time, I'd like to go ahead and show how this theme is developed in the rest of the Bible. Let's go ahead and read through our text here and make a few observations. Beginning in verse 7, Exodus 19 and verse 7. So Moses came and called the elders of the people and set before them all these words that the Lord had commanded him. That is, all the words of verses 1 through 6, that they were to be reminded of how God had borne them on eagle's wings, and that he said, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples, for all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests. Then verse 6, and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel. Okay, this is what he said. Now in verse 8, all the people answered together and said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. Now remember that word, all caps. Lord is Jehovah. And then it says, all that Jehovah has spoken, we will do. And Moses reported the words of the people to the Lord. And the Lord said to Moses, behold, I am coming to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you, and may also believe you forever. So he says, I'm coming to you in a thick cloud. I'm going to speak to you. All right, it's theater, is it not? In a way. This is God in a very dramatic way communicating truth by action or by pantomime. God is demonstrating some very important principles for Israel to learn. He says, I'm coming down in a thick cloud. Now, is God no bigger than a cloud? No, of course not. He fills the earth. He fills the universe. He's the creator of the heavens and the earth. But this is a dramatization by God to make a point. He's going to descend from heaven. Remember the theme in John about all of what the Lord talked about, what Jesus talked about, descending from heaven. And the whole idea that everything that he was teaching had come down from heaven. And he was faithful as a spokesman for God. He knew what he was talking about. He knew God. He came from God. So the theme in John mirrors this idea. God came down from heaven to the earth. Now they're going to watch. They're going to watch the drama of God coming down from heaven. I don't know whether he just appeared in the sky somewhere or if they looked up and they saw a dot, and as it got closer, it got larger and larger and larger until, like a big spaceship, like in these movies. But it's not a spaceship. This is the real presence that God wants them to identify as him, as he comes down to the mountain. And he says that the people who may hear when I speak with you and may also believe you forever. Why was it important that they believe Moses forever? Why would that be important?
Because Moses was the one who continued to speak on God's behalf.
That's it.
He wasn't going to keep manifesting himself in this way.
God was not going to be doing this forever. This is a one-time deal. But Moses was going to be God's mouth. And you have the 5 books of Moses: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And the unbelievers today are the most vicious in their attacks on the Bible in these 5 books. And the documentary hypothesis of the Bible starts here in the 5 books. The JEDP theory, they call it. And they take all these books and they try to discredit them. They attack Genesis. They attack Exodus. They attack the whole book. And they say it was not written. At first they said there was no writing in the days of Moses. That was invented much later. So it couldn't have been written by Moses. Then, of course, they found the Hammurabi stele goes back to the times of Abraham. So they had proof that there was writing not only in Moses' day, but 400 years before Moses there was writing. But the thing is, skeptics and unbelievers have repeatedly attacked Moses. Moses is the one who who wrote, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." That's the words that Moses wrote down by inspiration of God. So all of it you find in Genesis that is being attacked today is an attack against Moses. Now, God said, "I'm doing this that the people may hear when I speak and may also believe you forever," because it's so critical that we believe the teachings of Genesis. It's so critical that we believe the teachings of Exodus and all of the marvels that we've read about in the deliverance of Israel from Egyptian slavery and everything that follows, all the marvels of God. All of those marvels communicate fundamental truths that you have throughout the Bible all the way into the New Testament. And so, in Jesus' day, it was the Jews who were always trying to discredit Jesus by saying he's no Moses. Okay? And then what they had to learn was he's greater than Moses, even greater than Abraham. But that was saying something. The Jews had come to, those Jews at least, to unashamedly confess Moses and Abraham as being real ancestors and patriarchs and the voice of God. Now, reading on, when Moses told the words of the people to the Lord said to Moses, "Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their garments and be ready for the 3rd day. For on the 3rd day, the Lord will come down," or Jehovah will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. "And you shall set limits for the people all around, saying, take care not to go up into the mountain or touch the edge of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall be put to death. No hand shall touch him, but he shall be stoned or shot, whether beast or man. He shall not live. Okay? They were to consecrate themselves. What do you think that is implying? They are to consecrate themselves today, tomorrow, and they're to wash their garments. Didn't they do that every day? Maybe not. We are so spoiled in our prosperity and our comforts. It's nothing. We wash our clothes frequently, and we bathe every day or two. And that was not common in ancient times. Now, they are about to be in the presence of the King of heaven and earth. What would you do if you were to approach a king throughout all ancient history? If they were going to approach Nebuchadnezzar, do you suppose they didn't have to prepare themselves? You remember when in the book of Esther, when Esther was to be presented to the king? She spent days, weeks, months physically being prepared to be presented before the king. That was common among the kings of the ancient times. So if they are going to be presented to God, I think that's why that we generally think it's a good idea to, be presentable at least when you go before God to worship, don't you think? But this was very special. And so they were to consecrate themselves, that is, make themselves holy, okay? Devote themselves, and that would involve bathing, that would involve washing their clothes, to be in the very best dress and physical condition to be standing before God and witnessing the glory of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And so then we've already read here about setting the limits for the people not to pass, and the horror of the idea that should someone cross the line, they would have to die. And then he said, reading on a little bit more, verse 13 again, when the trumpet sounds a long blast, they shall come up to the mountain. What trumpet? And who's going to blow it? Who's going to sound the trumpet? Have you thought about that? He's not commanding somebody among the Israelites to blow a ram's horn. In fact, this is not even the normal word for a ram's horn. This is more of a metallic trumpet. This is like a silver or a brass trumpet that's to be sounded. But who would sound it? The implication is that God would sound the trumpet. So who would be summoning them? God or one of his angels would be blowing a trumpet. Does that sound familiar to you? When will we hear a trumpet of God?
Resurrection.
Okay. On the day of resurrection, on the last great day, we're told the trumpet shall sound. Who's going to blow that trumpet? God. It's going to be God or the heavenly angels or whoever God summons to blow the trumpet. It's an invitation. He's saying, now you may advance. Now you may draw near. And that's going to be exactly what happens beyond this life. God will sound the trumpet and he will invite us to advance. We will be raised from the dead and we will go up to meet our God. Meet our Lord Jesus in the air and stand before God for the day of judgment. That's a part of the drama here that the Lord is beginning to introduce to the whole world. He said in verse 14, so Moses went down from the mountain to the people and consecrated the people, and they washed their garments. And he said to the people, be ready for the third day, do not go near a woman. Now he has We don't have the details written down yet of how they were to be consecrated. We don't even have the details until the next book is the book of Leviticus, and there God, gives the instructions about consecrating the priest and consecrating others of the Israelites, and there's a whole lot of ritual that God commanded them in the book of Leviticus about consecration. But here we already have priests. He already tells Moses that here you have the people, and the priests they can come closer, but they can't go as close as Aaron, who was the patriarch of the priest. We're about to read that. So what we're reading about here, God has already revealed. He's instructed them, but it has not been written down yet, as it will be in the next book. So he says in verse 16, on the morning of the third day, okay, the 3 days or the 2 days of consecration, now beginning the third day, there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast, so that all the people in the camp trembled. I just wonder how their hearing was after that. I know that, when I went down to get my hearing tested and to see if I needed a hearing aid, and they found out what my deficiencies were and what that might have been caused by. And probably when you were a young man, you were working in a shop somewhere, it was a lot of loud noises, and it wiped out certain parts of your hearing. Keep that in mind, Jake. You can lose a lot of hearing when you're young, by allowing your ears not to be protected. But now, this is a sound. You remember when God had sent the hail on the Egyptians, there was thunder then. And it was thunder that was so terrifying that Pharaoh was humiliated and terrified, and when he begged Moses to ask God to stop the hail, he specifically said, please stop the thunder. I don't want to hear the thunder anymore. So whatever thunder and lightning God sent with that plague of hail, it was a terrifying thing. And I'd like to submit to you that this was terrifying. The people trembled because the sound was... What does your dog when it thunders? What does your dog do? If it's in the house, it jumps in your lap, runs under your feet, goes hides under the bed. What do your children do when they're small? Well, if you're having a thunderstorm in the middle of the night, your children run, they come banging on your door. Can we get into your bed, Mama? Some of us, when we're already grown, we still have that, we want to run and jump into bed with Mama, but Mama might not be there. It can be a terrifying thing. Now, they're standing before the throne, and God I don't believe He's destroying their hearing. God can make thunder that does not destroy. I believe He can. It would still be terrifying. I don't think He hurt them as a result of this, but He was impressing them with something very powerful. Thunders and lightning and a thick cloud on the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast. All right, that was the sign that they were to approach. So that all the people in the camp trembled. They're saying, don't go closer. At this point, I don't think they want to go closer. Do you? We're told that they are drawing farther and farther back because they are more and more terrified by the power and the glory and the majesty of God.
Okay.
Yes.
It's interesting in the book of Hebrews 12 and 21, it said, indeed it was so terrifying that Moses said, I tremble with fear.
Yes.
So
even Moses.
Yeah.
I marvel at Moses' courage because that he was there and witnessing and he was hearing everything that they were. And yet when God said to come up, he did. And I think that speaks a great deal to his courage as well as his faith in God, his trust. And so it says, then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God. You know, I don't have, I've got yellow marks and I got red marks and all that. And I hadn't put a single thing with that phrase right there. They came out of the camp to meet God. Imagine that. They were going to meet God. Yes?
Matthew 27 verse 54 says, now when the centurion and they that were with him watching Jesus saw the earthquake and those things that were done, they feared greatly, saying, truly this was the Son of Man.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Same type of thunder.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. When God acts on this earth, we read about it, and we have the advantage of having it written in the book, and we can sit in our pajamas in bed, and we can read that, and you know, that's just kind of like a movie we're watching, or it's just a story from a storybook. But when they were experiencing it, these were terrifying things. Now, they are going to meet God. It's not that they didn't know God or have experience with God. They had seen all kinds of God's glory. They watched the column of fire by night and column of cloud by day, and they walked behind it. But this was going to be something special, something even more. They were going to meet God, and they took their stand at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke because the Lord had descended on it in fire. The smoke of it went up like the smoke of a kiln. Anybody here know what a kiln is?
Furnace. That's what it says, furnace.
Furnace, okay. It's a particular kind of furnace. Anybody want to take a stab at it?
It's usually for hardening pottery.
Okay. It's designed for hardening clay pottery into a form that won't break so easily, and they'll glaze it, you know, with sand for it to kind of melt into glass and give it a kind of a glossy look. I took pottery when I was in elementary school, and I remember that. It was amazing to me. I made a hippopotamus out of clay. I painted it blue, I think, and with a glaze, and it was a beautiful thing to behold. Gave it to my mother for Mother's Day. But in order to do that, you have to have a very hot furnace, okay? And that's what you've got here. So they would identify the kiln or the furnace that was used for making pottery. And so all the smoke and all the heat and the fire. And the whole mountain trembled greatly. Okay. The whole mountain's trembling now. Anybody here ever been in an earthquake? Okay, yeah, you lived in California. Anybody from California knows about earthquakes, right? Okay. I haven't had that experience, but I have been told it is a terrifying experience to be standing on the ground and actually have the ground moving, you know. Imagine standing before a mountain and watch a mountain tremble, okay, and shake. I'm just trying to point out that everything that happens here is frightening. Every detail of everything that happens, showing God's great power. You realize how small and how weak and how insignificant you and I are in the presence of our God. We cannot think of God in such a casual way. I understand He is our Heavenly Father, and He calls us His Son. But nothing has changed about this. He is still a terrifying presence who is worthy of our respect and of our fear. And this is laying a groundwork because it is godly fear that makes us able to rejoice in God's presence. It is the joy that we learn in the Bible begins with godly fear. If you never learn to fear God, you never can learn to rejoice with God. The two are bound closely together. Okay, we're going to read a little bit more here. We're told, verse 19, and as the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in thunder. The Lord, Jehovah, came down on Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain. And the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain. And Moses went up. And the Lord said to Moses, go down and warn the people, lest they break through to the Lord to look, and many of them perish. And also let the priests who come near to the Lord consecrate themselves, lest the Lord break out against them. Do you see how the word break is being used here? Break out. There's someone wanting to break out of the group and go and maybe touch God or see God, see the presence of God. It's a very special, once in a lifetime opportunity. He said, but you break out and then I will break out against you. And so it would be certain death. And verse 23, and Moses said to the Lord, the people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you yourself warned us, saying, set limits around the mountain and consecrate it. And the Lord said to him, go down and come up, bringing Aaron with you. But do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to the Lord, lest he break out against them. So Moses went down to the people and told them. Okay, so we are sufficiently awestruck today. It's what do you call it? It's customary or it's common for us to use the expression awesome. Somebody does something, is admirable, and we say awesome. What do we mean by awesome?
It inspires awe. Okay,
inspires awe. The word awe actually in its root means fear. Okay? The awe that we're talking about is not just say, isn't that neat? Okay? It's a lot more than neat. It's a lot more than amazing. It is terrifying. It is so great. Awesome. It is so awesome that it is the majesty and the glory of God. The book of Isaiah is especially designed to bring out the majesty of God. And the majesty of God in Isaiah is tied together with the fear of God. You can't have one without the other. Okay.
But the world don't
yes.
teach that. They teach the love of God.
Yes.
All the time.
And the problem with that is?
Yeah. They don't teach the fear of God.
Yeah, God's my buddy. Yeah. Well, yeah, I understand. We want to have a close relationship with God. And we're not arguing about that. But the Bible goes to great lengths to try to impress us with the fact that our God is an awe-inspiring God. And it is a terrifying thing to fall into the hands of a living God. Yes?
Brother Jerry, I just find it so amazing that Moses got as close as he could and personal with God.
Mm-hmm.
And then he allowed Aaron to come up personally present with God.
Right.
And yet they lived.
Yes.
So you had two men, it's like two will bear witness of what I said.
Yes.
Remember that?
And we will, and further on, when we get into chapter 33, I believe it is, we'll get into the whole idea of seeing God face to face. And that's Moses and Jehovah God, and what that might involve. And we'll get into areas that I don't know that I can explain. Of course, how do you explain God? I don't think we'll ever be able to do that. And how can you see God? You can't see God. And God said that you can't see God. It's impossible to see God. But he showed his glory to Moses in some way. But the main point of that, he explains, is that God did not speak to Moses in figures or riddles. God spoke clearly and directly to Moses as one speaks to a friend face to face. So the whole idea of face to face in the book of Exodus that you find then in the New Testament, 1 Corinthians 13, face to face is talking about plain, direct, not in mysterious, difficult, mystical ways. You want to say
I was
something?
going to say, verse 19, it said God answered him by a voice in the Old Testament. I mean, Old King James.
Okay.
He didn't say it that way, but Moses understood what he said. It wasn't just a booming.
Absolutely, that's it.
It was a voice.
That's the point, yes.
Right.
These were words.
Right.
These were not just boom.
Yeah.
These were actually words between the two of them.
And something else before you get completely gone from this chapter. Wait just a minute. Verse 6 of chapter 19.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like New Testament, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It sounds a great deal like that.
It does.
And that's why last week I tried to connect it to 1 Peter 2 and verse 9. I think Peter quotes this phraseology from the Greek translation. Pardon?
Was he going to appoint them priests? Is that
Well, the whole nation, yes. The whole nation was to be a kingdom of priests, or a royal priesthood, as Peter says in 1 Peter 2, and now of you and me. We are God's priests.
Yeah.
And the whole idea there would be to teach the world. They were to be a vessel of the Word of God as priest to teach the rest of the world the true knowledge of God. That was their purpose. They failed in that because they preferred to be taught by the world. They wanted to be like the world.
Yeah.
And that's our problem. God gives us the knowledge, makes us priests, but we don't like that. We want to conform to this world, and we want to get along with the world, and we want to compromise with the world, and so the world learns nothing from us. They can't know God if we surrender the truth to those who would twist and corrupt
What a
it.
privilege it is to be called. It's a privilege to be
It
called
is.
that, isn't it?
It is a great privilege. It's a great honor
Yeah.
to be called of God a treasured possession,
Yeah.
which is what you also have in there in 1 Peter 2. That's right. Okay, I'd like to take the last few minutes here, and they are very few, I'm sorry. But I've got 2 more pages here, and I know I won't be able to get through all this. But just a few things. Judges 5 and verse 4. We'll do what we can. Here in the Song of Deborah, when Deborah has been given victory over, Deborah and Barak, victory over the Canaanites, verse 4, the Lord, when you went out from Seir, when you marched from the region of Edom, the earth trembled and the heavens dropped. Yes, the clouds dropped water. The mountains quaked before the Lord. Even Sinai before the Lord, the God of Israel. And as she's bringing together the past history of when the mountains before God quaked. Even Sinai had quaked before God. And we're reading about that right here. Psalm 77 and verse 11. Psalm 77 and verse 11. I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your wonders of old. I will ponder all your work and meditate on your mighty deeds. Your way, O God, is holy. What God is great like our God? You are the God who works wonders. You have made known your might among the peoples. You with your arm redeemed your people, the children of Jacob and Joseph. When the waters saw you, O God, when the waters saw you, they were afraid. Indeed, the deep trembled, and the clouds poured out water. The skies gave forth thunder. Your arrows flashed on every side. The crash of your thunder was the whirlwind. Your lightnings lighted up the world. The earth trembled and shook. Your way was through the sea, your path through the great waters, yet your footprints were unseen. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Isn't that beautiful? Psalm 114. Psalm 114. When Israel went out of Egypt, the house of Jacob from a people of a strange language, Judah became his sanctuary, Israel his dominion. The sea looked and fled. Jordan turned back. The mountains skipped like rams, the hills like lambs. What ails you, O sea, that you flee? O Jordan, that you turn back? O mountains, that you skip like rams? O hills, like lambs? Tremble, O earth, at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the God of Jacob, who turns the rock into a pool of water and the flint into a spring of water. What does tremble mean, by the way? Daniel 5 and verse 5. What does tremble mean? Has anybody ever trembled here about? Have you ever been so afraid of something that you actually trembled? Okay. I don't know. We live in pretty secure times, and I don't know that many of us have really known that much fear before in our lives. Look here in Daniel 5 and verse 5, when you had King Belshazzar making a feast there at the end of Babylon's history. Immediately the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall in the king's palace opposite the lampstand. The king saw the hand as it wrote. Then the king's color changed, and his thoughts alarmed him. His limbs gave way, and his knees knocked together. Did you know that was in the Bible? I know, I've seen cartoons about that, where the knees are trembling so bad, so violently, that the knees are knocking together. Have you ever experienced that? I've heard people talk about being in front of, by a wild animal and thinking they're going to die and lose all control of the bodily functions. You tremble as you expect to be torn limb from limb by some wild animal or by some great phenomenon. The idea of trembling is something that expresses a deep and profound fear. In both the Old and the New Testament, we are urged to serve the Lord with fear and trembling. And that's what they're doing here at the foot of the mountain of God. Psalm 97 in verse 1 through 5. Jehovah reigns, let the earth rejoice. As all of that's going on, I'm not going to read that. Psalm 99 verse 1, Jehovah reigns, let the people tremble. Let them rejoice, let them tremble. Isaiah 66, 2 and 5. Let the contrite tremble, he says. Hear the words of Jehovah, you who tremble at his word. In other words, before his word, you tremble. Isaiah 64, 1 through 4. Oh, that you would rend the heavens and come down, that the nations might tremble at your presence. And then Isaiah 2, 3 times, you have this expression repeated 3 times. Enter into the rock and hide in the dust from before the terror of Jehovah, from the splendor of his majesty. Then you have that repeated in the New Testament as well. Isaiah 8, 11 through 13. Kind of like Matthew 10:24 or 10:28, and also in Luke. Let him be your fear. Let him be your dread. Don't be afraid of what men might do to you, but let God be your fear. Let God be your dread. If you fear God, you can become a valiant man toward anything else. If God is on your side, you have nothing to be afraid of. Christians tremble before God, but they are not cowards. They are courageous because they fear God more than they do man or anything else. Well, New Testament. Okay, I'm going to skip a bunch just to give you a few. Philippians 2 and verse 12. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling, it says. Luke 12 and 5. Twice, fear Him. Fear God. Fear God. 2 Corinthians 7 and verse 1. Perfecting holiness in the fear of God. Ephesians 5 and 21. That we should serve one another. He says there, in the fear of God. And then Hebrews 4 and 1, let us fear lest we suffer as the Israelites did. He said, let us fear. 1 Peter 1:17, conduct yourselves with fear throughout the time of your sojourn upon this earth. 1 Peter 2 and verse 17, fear God. 1 Peter 3 and 15, be always ready to make a defense. Okay? How does that go? I used to quote that thing. I've forgotten how it goes now. How does it start? 1 Peter 3 and 15.
Be ready to give an answer.
That's it. Yeah. But in your hearts, regard Christ as Lord, Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect. The other word respect is fear. Having a good conscience, so that when you are slandered, those who revile your good behavior in Christ may be put to shame. So as we are defending Christ and the gospel, we have to do so in gentleness and with reverence toward our God, because He's going to be watching. Okay, well, Revelation, of course, 3 times. Fear God, it says. Christians are called those who fear God. We need an invitation song. We have a song.
293.
293.
Yeah, victory in Jesus.